translation that speaks in words that we are always familiar with when we read out of the King James, but is a very understandable version. The Message from Ecclesiastes chapter 9, beginning with verse 7, and it's printed in your bulletins. Seize life. Eat bread with gusto. That's not a jelly. Drink wine with a robust heart. Oh yes, God takes pleasure in your pleasure. Dress festively every morning. Don't skimp on colors and scarves. Relish life with the ones you love. Each and every day of your precious life. Each day is God's gift. It is all you get in exchange for the hard work of staying alive. Make the most of each one. Whatever turns up, grab it and do it. And heartily. This is your last and only chance at it, for there's neither work to do nor thoughts to think in the company of the dead, where you're most certainly headed. That's somber, sobering passage. Why in the world would we talk about that passage right after the birth of Christ? Because I'll talk about that tonight a little bit. With birth comes the inevitable. Do you remember when you were a child and someone asked you what you wanted to be when you grew up? You remember that? If in this day of terrorism and nuclear threat, you were to ask a 10-year-old child what they want to be when they grow up, they're likely to say, alive. Whenever I'm asked if I'm happy, I often respond, I love my life, I love my wife, I love my family, and I love my work. I'm overwhelmed every day. I know that as a Christian, I'm supposed to look forward to heaven. But I don't really want to die yet because I'm having so much fun. Jesus summed up his mission to earth with these famous words from John 10. I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. If I were to sum up all that I say to you tonight, it would be, it's good to die young at a very old age. Our pop culture might say, have a blast while you last. There is a spiritual truth to this. As long as we're going to be here, we might as well have a blast while we last. Remember folk singer Joan Baez? She said, you don't get to choose how you're going to die or when. You only get to choose how you're going to live now. You've seen gravestones where under the name is two dates. And what separates the two dates? The little hyphen. A dash is two hyphens. So usually there's just one little dash or one little hyphen. And you know that is the entire life of the person. We see the year of their birth, we see the year that they expired, and in between is simply a short line. What are you doing with your hyphen, your short line? How will you fill that short line that somebody someday may put on your tombstone or your cremation urn? I believe the words of Ecclesiastes would agree. So how should we live in light of our sure and certain death? I like Eugene Peterson's way of wording that, and that's why it's printed in your bulletin, so you can meditate on that, the message. And it offers a simple answer. Whatever turns up, grab it and do it, and heartily. It's your last and only chance at it, for there's neither work to do nor thoughts to think in the company of the dead, where you're most certainly headed. In this short verse, we find 4 principles that will indeed help us to die young at a very old age. First, do whatever is close at hand. Whatever turns up, grab it and do it. See, it emphasizes the unpredictable nature of life. No matter how well planned our days may be, something unexpected is always bound to turn up. And when it does, grab it and deal with it. Ecclesiastes is saying that we should take hold of the ordinary responsibilities in life and make sure they get done. It's easy for any of us to live in the never land of what we plan to do tomorrow. We dream about having a healthy year free of illness or accident, or starting a diet, or especially at this time of the year, or getting a new job, or beginning a new relationship with someone special, or going on a dream vacation, or having enough money to last until we die, hopefully a natural death, or any of 1,000 other worthwhile ideas. But in the meantime, there's work to be done, much of it tedious, and somehow gets left undone while we dream about what we're going to do someday. Unfortunately, that someday does not come for many people. One good deed is worth more than 1,000 brilliant theories, said Charles Spurgeon, an old preacher. It's better to do what you need to do than to waste 4 hours dreaming about what you would like to do. When Solomon says, whatever turns up, grab it and do it, he doesn't mean if you happen to find something to do it. But if you don't, then take the day off and watch TV. That's not what he's saying. No, you will always find something to do. There's always work to be done. Don't you know? Someone has to make the bed and get ready for the day. Someone has to cook the meals. Someone has to walk the dog and clean up the poop. Someone has to pay the bills. Someone has to go shopping. Someone has to have the car serviced. Someone has to write the thank you notes. Someone has to make sure you have enough medication. Someone has to make sure, someone. And so it goes. You see, that's what life is about. A whole series of large duties and small duties that someone has to do. It doesn't help when we complain and say, I don't feel like doing it. Nike, N-I-K-E, a Portland, Oregon-based company that makes the athletic shoes. Debbie and I drove by it last October, and huge plant. Goes on and on and on. Has a famous slogan that is 3 words. What are they? Just do it. Yeah, and it's the famous Nike slash. You know, the little swoosh? Swoosh, not slash. Okay, thanks. Swoosh. Right. Well, when we see that swoosh, we're reminded, just do it. They've indoctrinated us with that. It's like a check mark. Get that checked off. Clever. But we all have things to do. We all have chores, responsibilities, assignments in life. No one that I know gets a free ride. You cannot pull the covers over your head and stay in bed forever, even on cold mornings like this one. The second advice in this passage is to do your work with passion. Do it heartily. Not only are we to do whatever turns up, but we're to tackle our work with gusto. It sounds Italian, doesn't it? Well, heartily. There's an old word for this the Puritans used. They called it earnestness. Earnestness. We don't use that word anymore. How's your work? Oh, full of earnestness. We don't say that. But we know it perfectly describes how Christians should approach their lives. Life is too short, too fragile, too precious to take lightly. Whatever we do, we should do it heartily, with enthusiasm, with passion, with zeal, 100% commitment. You know, the commentators on TV say, he gave 110% commitment. What's that? It's 100%, isn't it? Yeah, I gave it all. We should do that. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, whatever your life's work, do it well. If it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, sweep the streets like Michelangelo painted pictures, like Shakespeare wrote poetry, like Beethoven composed music. Sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth will have to pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper who swept his job well. Wouldn't that be wonderful if they said that, the host of heaven said that with your name attached in what you do? I think there's a huge theological truth that underlies this principle. If you believe in the sovereignty of God, then it must be true that you are where you are because God wants you to be there. Because if God didn't want you to be there, you would be somewhere else. But since you are where you are right now, that must be because you are there by God's design. And when God wants you to be somewhere else, that's where you'll be. If you believe that, you can do your work each day, even in a very difficult situation, as unto the Lord with all your might, for God's glory. The third principle is to ponder the brevity of life. This is your last and only chance at it, for there's neither work to do nor thoughts to think in the company of the dead, where you're most certainly headed. Well, that's certainly a downer. Few of us want to hear that we're going to the grave. It's a fact we'd rather ignore. In fact, our culture ignores death. It pushes it aside. Even our language. We sugarcoat dying. Our language diminishes death. He passed on, passed away. We lost her. Lost her? She died. She's dead. She's not lost. But we say these things because it smooths out the inevitable. And funeral directors and funeral homes are the worst with their language and their cushiony approach to death. I teach a 4-week class here at Grace once a year. It's part of this lay academy curriculum entitled Pre-Plan Your Funeral So Others Don't Have to. 4-week class. And during the class, we go to a funeral home that has inside the casket rooms. You can look at the caskets. Has a chapel. Has the embalming equipment table. Now, we don't watch an embalming. Okay. And it has the crematorium, where they cremate people, the oven room. And we go to that chapel in Olathe, and they give us a complete tour. And when we get into the casket room, there's a sign in the most expensive caskets, in the velvet, with the blue light and pink light shining on it to make it look so rich. There's a little folded cardboard sign that says, this is part of our culture, you know. It says, this casket is warranted for 15 years. Give me a break. A different translation of this verse in contemporary English version reads, work hard at whatever you do. You will soon go to the world of the dead, where no one works or thinks or reasons or knows anything. You will soon go to the world of the dead. Sounds like a bad fortune cookie in a bad Chinese restaurant. Something we don't want to see. But it's entirely true, whether we like it or not. Do you know what the leading cause of death is? I think I've asked some of you this already. In the world, the leading cause of death, what would you say? Cancer? Heart attack? Yeah. Those are causes of death. But the leading, number one cause of death worldwide?
Heart.
Not heart.
Procrastination.
Not procrastination. Birth. We're all going to die. Life is not a dress rehearsal. We might think about a time when we've experienced death personally. I remember when my father died. That was more than 44 years ago. He died at a young 50 years of age. My mother was 48 at that time. And soon after Dad's death, my sisters, I have two sisters, and my sisters and I, along with my mother, went out to the cemetery to look at the land and find a plot for my father. And the cemetery official showed us some beautiful places, and we picked out a spot that had the shadow of this giant wooden cross that would cast, the light would cast a shadow on that plot. We liked that early in the morning. And so as we were standing there looking at this plot, the funeral director looked at my mother and said, "Mrs. Bailey, we're going to bury your husband a little bit off center. That way there'll be plenty of room for you too." And I heard my mother gasp. See, she wasn't thinking about her own mortality. It was 35 years later that my mother died, and we buried her next to my father. While I was standing there, I had a surreal personal experience. Perhaps it was partly because I was grieving my mother's loss, or maybe because I saw so many old friends there that were at my father's funeral when they were in their 40s and 50s. And now they're in their mid-80s and 90s. It was as if there was a wrinkle in time, and all those years since my father died had been swallowed up. The years just disappeared. I was a graduating senior in high school when he died. I'm 61 now. And most of the family friends who came to the graveside were gone by the time of my mother's funeral. But those that were there just startled me. Here I was standing 3 feet from my mother's casket, and right next to her was my dad's grave. My father had died. My mother has died. But someday, I might be close by there too. Someone's going to bury me. And I had this flash of my own mortality. This flash in front of me. It seemed as if the Lord had whispered in my ear, "Tom, take a good look. You'll be here someday." That day is likely to come sooner than later for most of us because we don't think much about it. You know, what I experienced that day was profound. It was a revelation of my own weakness, my own humanity, my own frailty. A reminder of the ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Dust thou art, to the dust thou shalt return. And that's true for all of us someday. See, life is not a dress rehearsal. We do get one chance to do whatever we're going to do on this earth. During the horrific events of 9/11, millions of people picked up their phones to call each other. Parents called children, and brothers called sisters, and friends called friends. And you called somebody, or somebody called you. Long-lost relatives called to make sure everyone was okay. And one of the ironies of all of that was that it took a huge tragedy to force us to face the brevity of life. How precious it is. And finally, Ecclesiastes is telling us, be thankful for things large and small. So seize life. Carpe diem. Eat bread with gusto. Drink wine with a robust heart. We serve grape juice. But whatever your beverage, do it in celebration, in moderation. Oh yes, God takes pleasure in your pleasure. Dress festively every morning. Don't skimp on the colors and the scarves. And men, wear that flashy tie if you feel like putting on a tie. Relish life with the ones you love, each day and every day of your precious life. For each day is God's gift to you. It's all you get in exchange for your hard work of staying alive. Make the most of each day. Take time to enjoy the simple pleasures of life. Delightful things are all around, simply waiting to be found. King Solomon, who knew much about pleasure, offers some very good practical advice. And we might translate it into today's idiom this way. Enjoy a good meal. Appreciate every moment as a gift from God. Wear your clothes that speak of joy, not of sorrow. Brush your hair. Put on your makeup. Iron your shirt. Look sharp. Put a smile on your face. Don't be a grumpy old man or woman. Don't be a grumpy young one either. Look for God's hand at work in your life. Look for God's work at hand in your life. Enjoy your family and those you love. Savor every moment you spend together. Savor time with your close friends. Put out your best. Use your china, your crystal, and your sterling silver more often. And realize that God is at work in the details of your life. For we know God rules over all of our lives. You see, God apportions to you and me a lot, L-O-T, in life. And I don't mean a burial lot. I mean a portion of who you are. That lot involves being born in a particular place, to a unique set of parents, of growing up in a particular home in some town, in the country, or going to this school, or meeting new friends, or having followed a particular career path. That's been your lot. Things that seem to randomly happen to you are most likely not really random at all. They're all part of God's plan. Some of it we see clearly. Some of it makes no sense. But if we are wise and attentive, we will see God working in us and around us and through us in our life. Even things that don't at the time seem to fit. Were you born in the United States? Anybody here born outside the United States? So what if you were born in Romania, or Czechoslovakia, or Israel, or Russia, or Bolivia? What if you'd been born in a village in a jungle? Your life would have been completely different than it has been. Not necessarily better or worse, but different in its outward details. In my life, it was my lot to be born as Tom Bailey. Well, I was called Tommy when I was born. And I was born and raised in Wyoming, the son of Robert Ellis Bailey and Myrtle Marie Marr. Born brother to Lane and Patricia, and husband to Debbie, father to Drew and Philip, father-in-law to Sarah, and the happy master of two cats, Chips and Kimmy. And over the last 35 years of marriage, my wife Debbie and I have lived in Twin Falls, Idaho, Coquille, Oregon, Casper, Wyoming, Kansas City, Kansas, Baser, Kansas, and now we live happily in Olathe, Kansas. I could add details, but what would it matter? Is all of that going to be on my tombstone? I don't think so. My 61 years can be summarized in 2 sentences. And I invite you to summarize your life in 2 sentences. But mine says, if I am ungrateful or unhappy, I am wasting what God has given me. And I am guilty of questioning God's wisdom and doubting His goodness. Now, that's not going to be on my tombstone either. But it summarizes my life. Sometimes we need to be reminded that God is to be seen, not just in the big events, but in the tiny, minute details of the routine days we experience. All things bright and beautiful. All creatures great and small. All things wise and wonderful. Who made them all? The Lord God. Not long ago I came home from a hectic day in a very grouchy mood because so many things had not gone right. It had been a day of frustration, long meetings, phone calls, dealing with, contrary people. And in general, it was one of those miserable days that most of us have now and then. And I could go into great detail, but spare you all of that. It was a horrible day. And when my wife Debbie asked me when I came in the door how my day had gone, I unloaded my litany of woe. Not details of people, but just my litany of woe, my self-pity. I gave it all to Debbie. And when I was finished, she expressed the appropriate amount of sympathy and said she was sorry that I'd had a bad day. But in my selfishness, it didn't seem to me like it really registered with her. I don't think she fully grasped the amount of the frustration and the compassion fatigue I was having, and so I started to complain all over again. Sweet wife, Debbie is, she listened just a little bit longer, and I'm certain that her patience came to an abrupt end. She no doubt had heard enough, and I'm sure she would have so wanted to tell me what I suspect wives have said to complaining husbands since the beginning of time. 2 words: grow up. Grow up. And that would have been the right thing for her to tell me. The key here is to stop complaining and open our eyes and see how good God has been to us. Now, I have learned how to play a new game, and I'm going to teach it to you right now. And I highly recommend this new game for you. When I am discouraged, I play the God-citing game. When I want to complain, I play this God-citing game. It's very simple to do. I just look around and I see where I can find God's fingerprints in my day, in my life. They're everywhere. So here's how it works. You start to see where God would show up. And very soon you start to see then God in all the small things. A phone call from a friend. The sun shining today. Wasn't it rich? And a personal nice email. Not a forward cutesy thing. A personal nice email. A friend who dropped by. A note from one of your children or grandchildren or parents with good news. A hymn you haven't sung for a while that brings new joy because you hear the words and it resonates. And you know what you'll find? If you pay attention, you start seeing God in many places. Sometimes it's just a small little thing that God would do, something that causes you to say, that was the Lord who did that for me. You learn that if you keep your eyes open for God and your ears open to hear, your mind alert, pretty soon you begin to see and hear God everywhere. God-citing game. One of the problems you and I have is that we focus on the spectacular answers to prayer. I think an example of that is, God, if you just get me through this crisis, I'll be good to you forever. I'll be good to you. God must laugh when we say things like that. And you can imagine how we talk to God in the midst of our crisis, large and small. God says, that's not always where you're going to see me. Look for my fingerprints in the small things. Listen for the whisper of my voice. So I find myself praying, Lord, open the eyes of my heart that I might see you everywhere. And you know what? I begin to see God at work in places where I have not seen God before. And a lot of times it's in the faces of other people and in the deeds they do. And in this church, Grace United Methodist Church, I see that every day in the people that are belonging and are connected with our connectional system here at this church. I see that in other people who are working for God in all the things they do. And everyone in this room has seen that in somebody else. And I pray that it becomes our standard that we begin to see God working in us as well. You've probably seen this quotation many times. It's over 200 years old, and it comes originally from the Quakers. I expect to pass through the world but once. Any good, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness that I can show to my fellow creatures, let me do it now. Let me not defer or neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. This is the day the Lord has made. This day. So let us rejoice and be glad in it. When you die, somebody is going to take your body and put it in a box, a casket or a cremation urn. And whether we have a traditional casket or a cremated, we're all going to do some serious box time before it's over. See, no one escapes the box. The point is, whatever you're going to do it now. If you intend to do some good deed, do it now. If you have some great plan, work on it now. If you intend to do something or be something or try something, do it or be it or try it now. See, later you can take it easy in the box. That sounds kind of strange, but it shouldn't. What I'm saying is precisely the meaning of this Ecclesiastes passage. The goal of my life is very simple. I want to die young, at a very old age. That's not just playing with words, it's a philosophy of life. Growing old is not just a matter of chronology, it's also a stage. You can be old at 20. You can be young at 85. Think of someone you know that's doing that. My goal is to die young at a very old age, and in the meantime, doing everything I can to share the good news of Jesus Christ. That's my personal goal. I don't want to be saved. I had a guy come to my door and ask if I'd been saved. I said, I don't want to be saved. I want to be used up. Don't save me for anything. I want to go down serving and singing and loving and laughing and having a good time, living my life until the day comes when they finally lower me in the ground or cremate my ashes, cremate my body into ashes or whatever they do. The question is not how old are you? The question is, how old do you feel? How old was Abraham when Isaac was born? Almost 100 years old. How old was Moses when he led the Jews out of Egypt? He was 80 years old. No, he was 80 years young. An old man could never do what Moses did. We live until we die, and we don't die until we're dead. I don't want to die until I'm dead. I want to live until the very last moment, fully invested for Jesus Christ and for God's kingdom, doing everything I can to advance God's causes in the world, beginning within me. So, enjoy the life God has given you. The life. Not lives, plural. Live every day to the max. Have a blast while you last. Live like you're not afraid to die. And live to die young at a very old age. Amen?
Amen.